Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dusty, starlit streets of ancient Sumer, where the air hums with the chatter of merchants and the faint clink of clay pots. You're wandering a Mesopotamian night market, the kind that pops up when the sun dips below the horizon and the desert cools just enough to make life bearable. Torches flicker, casting shadows on mud brick walls, and the scent of roasted barley and fresh-baked bread wafts from every corner. Somewhere nearby, a brewer stirs a bubbling vat, and you're here to chase the origins of that frothy, slightly sour drink they call beer. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive a single sip of this stuff without a modern stomach pump, but let's give it a whirl anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle through the crowded market, sandals kicking up dust as you dodge a donkey loaded with grain sacks. The stalls are a chaotic symphony of colors, piles of dates, figs, and lentils stacked high, their earthy sweetness mingling with the tang of fermented mash. You pause at a brewer's stand, where a wiry man with a clay-stained tunic pours a murky liquid into a customer's cup. This, my friend, is where beer begins, in the cradle of civilization, around 3500 BCE. Historians agree that Mesopotamia, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is one of the first places humans figured out how to turn soggy barley into a drink that made evenings a little less existential. This is your mainstream fact. Sumerians didn't just stumble into brewing, they practically invented it, making beer a staple long before bread was a sure thing. You watch the brewer hand over a straw. Yep, a straw, because sipping through reeds was the classy way to avoid gritty sediment. Bet you didn't expect your craft IPA obsession to trace back to a guy dodging donkey droppings in a Sumerian alley, huh? As you weave deeper into the market, you notice the brewer's stalls are the loudest, packed with folks haggling over clay jars. The air feels alive, like a party nobody planned, but everyone showed up for. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some of these jars have tiny cuneiform marks scratched into them, not just for decoration, but to tally the beer's strength. Think of it as the world's first ABV label, except instead of 5%, it's a wedge-shaped scribble meaning, "This'll knock you out by moonrise." You chuckle as a customer, clearly a few sips in, tries to barter a goat for a jug. Good luck, buddy. Hope that goat's got a better exchange rate than your dignity. The market's pulse is infectious, and you're starting to get why beer wasn't just a drink here. It was a social glue, a ritual, a paycheck. You spot a woman balancing a massive clay pot on her shoulder, her arms steady as she navigates the crowd. She's probably delivering to a tavern, where the real party's brewing. But not everyone agrees on how this all started. Historians still argue whether beer was a happy accident or a deliberate invention. Did some forgetful farmer leave wet barley out too long, only to find it fizzing with promise? Or were Sumerians methodically experimenting, chasing a buzz like ancient mixologists? You ponder this as you pass a stall selling flatbreads, their charred edges reminding you of that time you experimented with toast and set off the smoke alarm. The debate's murky, like the beer itself, but it's clear these markets were where ideas and drinks flowed freely. You lean closer to a brewer's vat, catching a whiff of something sour and bready. It's not exactly happy hour at your local brewery, but there's a strange charm to it, like stumbling into a recipe older than your entire family tree. The market's glow pulls you along, past weavers spinning wool and scribes scratching clay tablets. Every so often, a brewer calls out, offering a sample. You hesitate. Modern you knows about sanitation, or the lack thereof. One sip might be a one-way ticket to a week of regrets. But you're curious, aren't you? You imagine dipping a straw into that cloudy brew, tasting something halfway between bread dough and regret. Joke number 2. It's probably the only drink in history that doubles as a meal and a personality test. The crowd around you doesn't seem to mind, though. They're laughing, trading gossip, passing jars like they're at a block party. This market isn't just about buying stuff. It's where Sumerians connected, where beer went from a quirky experiment to the heartbeat of their evenings. As you round a corner, the torchlight dims, and the stalls thin out. You're still holding onto that image of the brewer's vat, its bubbles whispering secrets from 5 millennia ago. The night market's chaos feels like a time machine, dropping you into the moment beer became more than a drink, it became a way of life. You're not just wandering a market, you're tracing the roots of something that shaped cities, temples, and probably a few bad decisions. Ready to step closer to the brewing process itself? Hang tight, because those clay pots are about to spill some serious secrets. You're still lingering in the fading glow of that Sumerian night market, the air thick with the scent of roasted barley and the distant hum of chatter. You've left the bustling stalls behind, and now you're trailing a brewer through a narrow alley, where the real magic happens, the brewing huts. The mud brick walls loom close, and you spot stacks of clay pots, their rounded bellies glinting under the moonlight. These aren't just any pots. They're the unsung heroes of Mesopotamian beer, the vessels that cradle every batch of that cloudy, sour brew you were too chicken to sip back at the market. And honestly, who could blame you? One wrong gulp, and you're praying to gods you didn't know existed. Tonight, you're about to uncover why these clay pots aren't just containers, but the backbone of an ancient brewing tradition that's older than your entire hometown. You duck into a low-roofed hut where the air feels cooler, almost damp. A brewer, her hands dusted with clay, is inspecting a row of pots, each one sealed with a lid that looks like it's seen better days. Here's your mainstream fact. Clay pots were essential to Mesopotamian brewing around 3000 BCE, designed to hold heat, trap moisture, and let fermentation work its fizzy magic. These weren't your grandma's flower pots. They were precision tools, shaped from riverbed clay and fired in kilns to withstand the slow, sweaty process of turning grain into grog. You watch the brewer tap a pot gently, listening for that telltale hum of fermentation. It's like she's tuning a guitar, except the song is a batch of beer that could knock out a camel. Joke number 1. If these pots could talk, they'd probably complain about being filled with sour sludge for centuries. You kneel beside a pot, its surface etched with faint cuneiform marks. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some pots were branded with symbols to show who owned them or what kind of beer was inside, like an ancient version of a craft brewery logo. You imagine a Sumerian hipster bragging, "Oh, this? It's a limited edition barley stout from Uruk's finest." The marks might say strong brew or tavern grade, but you're pretty sure one just says, "Don't touch, this is Enki's." You trace the grooves with your finger, feeling the weight of thousands of years in that rough clay. These pots weren't just practical. They were status symbols, passed down like family heirlooms. A good pot could make a brewer's reputation, or break it if it cracked mid-batch. But here's where things get murky. Historians still argue whether these pots were reused for multiple brews or tossed after one go. Were Sumerians eco-conscious, rinsing and refiring their pots like thrifty artisans? Or did they churn through clay like it was disposable Tupperware, piling up shards in ancient landfills? You glance at the brewer, who's now stirring a fresh batch with a wooden paddle. She doesn't seem like the wasteful type, but those cracked pots in the corner tell a different story. You smirk, thinking of your own kitchen cabinet, stuffed with mismatched lids and regrets. Joke number 2. Maybe the Sumerians invented the one-pot meal trend, except their version came with a side of existential dread. The hut's walls are lined with pots of every size, some squat and wide, others tall and narrow like ancient amphorae. You notice how the shapes aren't random. Wider pots are for mixing grain and water, while narrower ones are for fermentation, keeping the brew cozy as it bubbles away. The clay's porous nature is key, letting just enough air seep in to feed the yeast, but not so much that the whole batch turns to vinegar. You lean closer, catching a whiff of that sour, bready aroma from a sealed pot. It's not exactly inviting, but it's alive. Like the brew's got a personality, and it's not thrilled to meet you. The brewer points to a pot with a straw-sized hole in its lid, designed for sipping without disturbing the sediment. Clever, right? It's like they knew you'd rather not chew your beer. You step outside, where more pots are stacked under a reed awning. The night air feels crisp now, and you can still hear the market's distant buzz, that callback to the chaos you wandered through earlier. Those clay pots, though, they're the quiet stars of this story. Without them, there'd be no beer to trade, no taverns to fill, no late-night Sumerian karaoke sessions fueled by liquid courage. You picture a potter shaping clay by the river, hands steady, knowing their work will hold the drink that keeps the city humming. Joke number 3. These pots are basically the original six-pack, just heavier and with worse customer reviews. As you linger, the brewer starts sealing a fresh pot, her movements slow and deliberate. You're starting to get it. These vessels aren't just tools. They're time capsules, holding the secrets of a drink that built a civilization. You've stepped away from those clay pots now, their earthy scent still clinging to your tunic as you meander back toward the fields on the outskirts of the Sumerian city. The night has deepened, stars pricking the sky like scattered sesame seeds, and the ground under your feet shifts from dusty streets to soft, irrigated soil. You're heading into the heart of what makes all that brewing possible. The grain fields, where barley waves gently in the breeze. Remember those pots bubbling away? They'd be useless without this stuff. The golden stalks that fueled not just beer, but the entire Mesopotamian belly. And let's be real, if you think your gluten-free diet is tough, try surviving on a Sumerian menu. You'd probably trade your smartphone for a loaf of bread after one day. You crouch down amid the rows of barley, the plants brushing your legs like curious fingers. The air out here is fresher, laced with the green tang of growing things and the distant murmur of the Euphrates. This is where barley reigns supreme, the crop that Sumerians worshipped almost as much as their gods. Here's your mainstream fact. Barley was the cornerstone of ancient Mesopotamian diets around 4000 BCE, providing the carbs and calories that powered everything from pyramid building to poetry writing. It wasn't just food, it was the engine of civilization, grown in vast fields fed by clever irrigation canals. You run your hand along a stalk, feeling the rough husks that hide the grains inside. These little guys were ground into flour for bread, but more importantly, they were malted for beer, turning a humble plant into liquid gold. As you wander deeper into the field, you spot farmers harvesting under the moonlight, their sickles glinting faintly. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sumerians played grain games, sort of ancient betting pools where they'd wager on barley yields, predicting floods or droughts like weather gamblers. Imagine your local fantasy football league, but instead of touchdowns, it's tons of grain loser buys the beer, naturally. You chuckle softly, picturing a farmer high-fiving his buddy after a bumper crop. Joke number 1. Barley was so vital, they probably had barley-themed holidays, complete with awkward family gatherings and arguments over who grew the best batch. But not all is settled in the scrolls. Historians still argue whether barley was domesticated first for bread or for beer. Was it the need for a hearty meal that kicked off farming, or the allure of a relaxing brew after a long day in the sun? You pause by an irrigation ditch, watching water trickle through, nourishing the roots. Some say beer came as a byproduct, a happy accident from stored grains getting wet. Others insist Sumerians chased the buzz intentionally, breeding barley strains just for brewing. It's like debating if chickens were for eggs or nuggets. Either way, we're all winners. You dip your toes into the cool water, feeling the silt between them. A reminder of how this river valley made it all possible. The field stretches out like a sea of whispers, each stalk swaying in unison. You think back to that market brewer, her pots filled with this very grain, mashed and mixed into a porridge-like starter. Barley wasn't picky. It grew in the salty soils where wheat wouldn't dare, making it the tough guy of Mesopotamian agriculture. You imagine biting into a raw, grain-chewy, nutty, not exactly snack material, but in beer form? That's where the transformation happens. The farmers around you are bundling sheaves, their movements rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Joke number 2. These guys were the original multitaskers, farming by day and brewing by night. No wonder they needed a drink to unwind. You follow a path between the rows, the earth soft and yielding underfoot. Barley's role extended beyond the plate and the pot. It was woven into daily life, from offerings at temples to payments for labor. A worker might earn his wage in measures of barley, which he'd then trade for beer or bread. It's a cycle as old as time, and you're right in the middle of it, the night air carrying the faint rustle of leaves. Those clay pots you admired earlier? They're waiting for this harvest, ready to cradle the grains through their boozy rebirth. You spot a storage silo in the distance, a massive clay structure bulging with last season's yield. Sumerians were pros at stockpiling, ensuring there was always enough barley to keep the beer flowing, even in lean times. As the moon climbs higher, casting a silvery glow over the fields, you feel the weight of this grain's importance. It's not just fodder, it's the thread that ties diet, economy, and that cheeky evening sip together. Joke number 3. If barley could talk, it'd probably say, "I'm not just a grain. I'm the reason your ancestors partied." You linger a moment longer, inhaling the clean, vegetal scent, before the pull of the brewing process draws you onward. The daily grind of turning this bounty into beer is calling, and it's a routine as steady as the river's flow. You've wandered from those whispering barley fields now, the pre-dawn chill nipping at your skin as the first hints of light creep over the horizon. The city of Uruk is stirring, but quietly, like it's not quite ready to face the day. You're following a brewer, a sturdy woman named Inanna, let's call her that, after the goddess she probably prays to for good batches. She's up before the roosters, slipping out of her reed-thatched home with a yawn that echoes your own. Remember that barley you fondled in the fields? It's about to meet its destiny in her hands, through a routine that's as predictable as the river's flood and twice as messy. And if you think your morning coffee ritual is elaborate, wait till you see this. You'd probably hit snooze and let the gods handle it. You trail her to the brewing hut, the same one you peeked into earlier, now shrouded in the soft gray of dawn. The air inside is still, heavy with the residue of yesterday's brews. Inanna starts by checking her pots, those clay vessels you uncovered secrets about, lined up like soldiers awaiting orders. She inspects each one, sniffing for off odors, tapping for cracks. It's meticulous, almost meditative, the kind of focus that makes you wonder if she's brewing beer or channeling Zen. Here's your mainstream fact. Mesopotamian brewers followed a daily routine starting at dawn around 3000 BCE, involving grinding grain, mashing, and fermenting in a cycle that supplied temples, taverns, and households. No weekends off. Beer was too essential to slack. As the sun peaks up, turning the sky a rosy pink, Inanna hauls in fresh barley from a storage pit. You help sort of by not getting in the way, as she spreads the grains on a flat stone and starts grinding them with a heavy roller. The sound is rhythmic, a gritty crunch that fills the hut. Here's a quirky tidbit. Brewers sometimes added date syrup or herbs to the mash, not just for flavor, but to ward off evil spirits. Think of it as ancient aromatherapy with a boozy twist. You imagine her muttering incantations over the pot like, "Begone, bad batch demons." Joke number 1. If that doesn't work, she probably blames the barley for being too grainy in personality. But Dawn's work isn't without debate. Historians still argue whether brewers worked solo or in teams, with some evidence suggesting family affairs where kids pitched in, grinding grain like tiny apprentices. Was it a lone artisan's craft or a communal grind? You watch Inanna's steady motions, her muscles flexing under the linen tunic, and ponder if she's got helpers lurking in the shadows. The hut warms as the sun climbs, and sweat beads on her brow, yours too, just from observing. You're starting to appreciate why beer was worth the effort. It's not just a drink, it's a full-body workout. Mid-morning arrives with a bustle. Inanna mixes the ground barley with water from a nearby canal, stirring it into a thick porridge in a wide clay pot. The mixture steams gently over a low fire of dried reeds, the scent rising like fresh bread meets swamp. You lean in, feeling the heat on your face, as she adds a bit of old brew to kickstart fermentation recycling at its finest. Joke number 2. It's like sourdough starter, but if your bread dough could get you tipsy. The routine flows: mash, heat, strain through reed mats to catch the husks. She's efficient, her hands moving with the grace of someone who's done this 1,000 times. You think back to those market stalls, where this labor ends up in jugs for eager customers. By noon, the sun beats down mercilessly, turning the hut into a sauna. Inanna pauses for a quick meal: flatbread and dates, washed down with, you guessed it, a sip of diluted beer. It's her fuel, keeping her going through the heat. You sit in the shade outside, watching her resume with the wort, that sweet liquid she's boiled and cooled. Now comes the transfer to fermentation pots, sealed with clay lids punctured for straws. The daily grind peaks here, as she labels each with cuneiform scratches, noting the date or strength. It's administrative, almost boring, but that's the point: precision in the chaos of ancient life. Afternoon drags on, the light turning golden. Inanna checks ongoing batches, tasting with a reed straw, adjusting if needed. A pot's gone vinegary? She repurposes it for cleaning or offerings. No waste in this world. You follow her to the river for more water, the Euphrates sparkling under the sun. Carrying jars back, your arms ache in sympathy. This routine isn't glamorous. It's dawn to dusk drudgery with a fermented payoff. Joke number 3. Brewers were the original baristas, but instead of latte art, it's don't let it spoil art. As dusk approaches, the city quiets again. Inanna finishes by cleaning tools, stacking pots for tomorrow. The air cools, carrying the faint fizz from fermenting vessels. You've shadowed her all day, from grind to seal, seeing how this meticulous cycle ties back to the fields and pots you've explored. It's exhausting just watching, but there's a soothing rhythm to it, like the heartbeat of Sumer. The gods might get the credit, but it's folks like her who keep the beer flowing. You've bid farewell to Inanna's brewing hut as the stars reclaim the sky, her tools neatly stowed and the faint fizz of fermenting pots lulling the night. The city of Uruk feels alive in a different way now, with temple lights flickering in the distance like distant campfires. You're drawn toward the ziggurat, that massive stepped pyramid rising from the flatlands, where the air thickens with incense and murmured prayers. This isn't just a place for worship. It's where beer and the gods mingle, turning a simple drink into something sacred. And if you thought your Sunday brunch mimosa was a ritual, buckle up. These Sumerians took pour one out for the homies to a divine level. You'd probably spill half your offering just trying to keep up. You climb the wide stairs of the ziggurat, each step echoing softly, the cool stone underfoot a relief from the day's heat. At the top, priests in white robes move with deliberate grace, arranging altars adorned with clay figurines and fresh loaves. Beer's role here is no afterthought. It's central to the rituals that keep the gods happy and the crops growing. Here's your mainstream fact. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 2500 BCE, beer was offered to deities like Enki, the god of water and wisdom, as part of daily temple rituals to ensure fertility and prosperity. Temples weren't just spiritual hubs, they were economic powerhouses, brewing vast quantities of beer for offerings, festivals, and even paying workers. You watch a priest pour a libation from an ornate clay pot. Remember those vessels? Letting the golden liquid trickle into a basin before the statue of Inanna, the goddess of love and war. It's hypnotic, the way the beer catches the torchlight, bubbling slightly, as if alive with divine approval. As you linger near the altar, the scent of myrrh mixes with the sour tang of beer, creating an oddly comforting haze. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sumerians believed beer could carry messages to the gods, So they'd sometimes float tiny clay boats filled with brew down the river as offerings, like ancient message in a bottle but with a hoppy twist. Imagine the gods receiving these soggy deliveries, probably the origin of wet mail. Joke number 1. If the boat sank, did that mean the gods were on a diet, or just not thirsty that day? But the divine connection isn't without its mysteries. Historians still argue whether beer was seen as a gift from the gods or a human invention blessed by them. Was it Enki who taught mortals to brew, as some myths claim? Or did clever Sumerians figure it out and then credit the deities to avoid taxes? You ponder this while observing the priests chant softly, their voices rising and falling like a gentle wave. Some tablets suggest beer was divine mana, essential for immortality rituals. Others paint it as a practical tool for appeasing cranky gods. It's like debating if coffee is a miracle or just a bean. Either way, mornings wouldn't be the same without it. The ritual unfolds around you. Priests dipping reed straws into communal pots, sipping in unison as they invoke blessings. Beer ties everything together. It's poured over altars to nourish the gods, shared among worshippers to foster community, and even used in healing ceremonies to chase away ailments. You imagine joining in, the brew's warmth spreading through you, but modern you hesitates. Those unfiltered bits might be more authentic than your gut can handle. The ziggurat's platform feels vast, overlooking the city where Inanna's daily grind feeds into this sacred cycle. Temples owned breweries, employing folks like her to produce divine drafts for rituals. It's a seamless blend of the mundane and the mystical, where a pot of beer becomes a bridge to the heavens. Deeper into the night, the rituals intensify with a procession. Priests carry torches and pots, chanting hymns that echo off the bricks. You follow along, the crowd swelling with devotees offering their own small jugs. Beer's not just for the elite gods. Lesser spirits get their share too, sprinkled at crossroads or household shrines. Joke number 2. It's like leaving cookies for Santa, but if Santa was a pantheon of picky eaters who preferred their snacks fermented. The atmosphere is serene, almost sleepy, with the rhythmic pours and prayers lulling you into a trance. This is how beer wove into the fabric of faith-nourishing bodies and souls alike. As the moon hangs high, the final libations are made, beer soaking into the earth as an offering to underworld deities. You feel the weight of these ties, how a simple drink elevated daily life to something eternal. Those fields, pots, and routines you've traced all lead here, to rituals that bound humans to their gods through grog. It's comforting, in a way, knowing your evening wind-down has such ancient roots. The priests disperse slowly, leaving the ziggurat hushed, ready for dawn's return. You descend the ziggurat steps as the night deepens, the echoes of prayers fading behind you like a distant dream. The city streets are quieter now, lit only by the occasional oil lamp flickering in a window. You're drawn to a scribe's workshop, tucked away in a mud brick building near the temple precinct. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of damp clay and reed styluses. Tablets are stacked everywhere, etched with wedge-shaped marks that hold the secrets of Sumerian life. And tonight, you're here to decipher one in particular, the oldest known beer recipe, scratched into clay millennia ago. If you thought reading your grandma's handwritten cookbook was a challenge, try this. You'd probably mistake the instructions for alien doodles and end up with mud soup instead. You settle onto a reed mat, the scribe a scholarly type with ink-stained fingers, handing you a tablet under the lamplight. The surface is cool and smooth, covered in cuneiform script that looks like a flock of birds took a wrong turn. This isn't just any scribble. It's a guide to brewing, preserved from around 1800 BCE. Here's your mainstream fact. The oldest surviving beer recipe comes from ancient Mesopotamia, embedded in a hymn that outlines steps from malting barley to fermentation, making it a poetic blueprint for brewers. You trace the wedges with your finger, imagining the original scribe pressing his stylus with care. The recipe starts with barley, that grain you wandered through in the fields, soaked and spread to sprout malting, they call it, to unlock those sugars. As you puzzle out the lines, the scribe murmurs translations, his voice a soothing drone. The process unfolds. Mix the malted barley with water to create a mash, then bake it into a bread-like loaf called bapir. Let it ferment a bit, then crumble it back into a pot with more water, and perhaps some dates for sweetness. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sumerians used old bread crusts in their brewing, recycling day-old loaves into the mash to add flavor and kickstart the yeast. Think of it as the world's first upcycled beer, turning stale snacks into suds. You chuckle, picturing a Sumerian baker eyeing yesterday's bread and thinking, waste not, want brew. Joke number 1. It's like your fridge clean-out soup, but if it came out fizzy and made family dinners more interesting. But decoding isn't straightforward. Historians still argue whether the recipe includes hops or relies solely on herbs and dates for bitterness, with some tablets hinting at additions like honey or spices, while others keep it simple. Was it a bitter brew or more like a sweet, fruity ale? You squint at the tablet, the lamplight dancing on the clay. Some say the hymn's poetic language obscures exact measurements, leaving room for interpretation like a vague family recipe that says, add a pinch, but means a handful. The debate adds a layer of mystery, making you feel like a detective in a cozy ancient library. The recipe continues. After crumbling the bapir, stir in a fermenting agent, perhaps from previous batches, and let it bubble in those clay pots you uncovered earlier. The scribe points to a line about straining through reeds to remove husks, ensuring a smoother sip. You imagine the brewer, like Inanna from her daily grind, following these steps with ritual precision, tying back to the gods you witnessed in the temple. Beer wasn't improvised. It was scripted, a formula passed down through generations. Joke number 2. These tablets were the original brewing apps, but with no updates, just eternal beta testing. Deeper into the night, you decipher the fermentation phase. Seal the pot and wait, maybe a few days, until the fizz tells you it's ready. The recipe warns of watching for the right moment, lest it turn vinegary Sumerian for, oops, now it's salad dressing. You lean back, the mat creaking softly, absorbing how this simple list of steps revolutionized daily life. From fields to pots to gods, it's all connected in these clay lines. The scribe shares a sip from a modern approximation, cloudy and tart, but you decline politely, your stomach's still recovering from imaginary market samples. As the lamp oil burns low, the tablet's secrets feel alive, a bridge from past to present. You've pieced together the mash, the bake, the brew, feeling the weight of history in your hands. Joke number 3. Deciphering this is like solving a puzzle, where the prize is a hangover from 4,000 years ago. The workshop quiets, the city asleep around you, but the recipe's magic lingers, ready to reveal the funky side of fermentation next. You've left the scribe's workshop behind, the clay tablet's recipe still fresh in your mind as you slip back into the quiet streets of Uruk. The night air carries a faint, yeasty tang, drawing you toward a cluster of brewing huts where the real alchemy unfolds. Pots line the walls, some sealed tight, others humming with invisible activity. This is fermentation's domain, where the mash from that ancient recipe transforms into beer through a process that's equal parts science and sorcery. If you thought waiting for your bread to rise was agonizing, imagine staking your livelihood on wild yeasts. You'd probably stick to water and call it a day. But these Sumerians embraced the funky magic with open arms. You approach a row of clay pots, their lids slightly ajar to let gases escape, the air around them buzzing softly like a hidden beehive. Inside one, the mixture bubbles lazily, a frothy cap forming on top. Here's your mainstream fact. Early fermentation in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE relied on wild yeasts from the environment, converting sugars in the barley mash into alcohol and carbon dioxide over several days. No lab coats or thermometers. just nature's whims turning sweet wort into tangy beer. You peer inside, watching the tiny bubbles rise and pop, each one a mini explosion of transformation. The pot's clay walls, those secrets you uncovered, help regulate the temperature, keeping things cozy for the yeasts to do their dance. As you linger, the scent shifts from bready to something sharper, almost fruity with a hint of sour. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sumerians sometimes added fruits like dates or figs to the fermenting pot, not just for flavor, but because the natural yeasts on the skins acted as starters, giving the brew an extra kick-like inviting wild party crashers to liven up the mix. You imagine a brewer tossing in a handful of dates, whispering, "Come on, little guys, work your magic." Joke number 1. It's nature's way of saying, why buy yeast when the air's full of freeloaders? But the science isn't all clear-cut. Historians still argue whether Sumerians understood fermentation as a biological process, or attributed it purely to divine intervention. Did they recognize yeasts as living agents, or was it all the gods stirring the pot? You ponder this while listening to the gentle fizz, the pot seeming almost alive. Some tablets describe the brew coming to life, hinting at observation, but others credit deities like Ninkasi for the miracle. It's like debating if your yogurt cultures are science or sorcery. Either way, the result's deliciously tangy. The hut fills with a symphony of sounds, pops, gurgles, and sighs from the pots, each at a different stage of fermentation. You watch a brewer check one, dipping a reed straw for a taste, her face scrunching at the evolving flavors. Too sweet? It needs more time. Too sour? Might be headed for vinegar territory. This wild process was unpredictable, relying on airborne yeasts that could vary with the seasons or even the hut's location. Remember Inanna's daily grind? This is the payoff, where patience turns porridge into potion. Joke number 2. Fermentation's like a blind date full of potential, but sometimes it just goes sour. You move to another pot, this one further along, the foam subsiding into a clearer layer. The magic happens invisibly. Yeasts gobbling sugars, exhaling alcohol and CO2, creating that effervescent buzz. No modern sanitation here. Wild strains brought complexity, flavors ranging from nutty to herbal, far from your crisp lager. The clay's porosity allows subtle oxygenation, preventing off flavors while letting the funk develop. You inhale deeply, the aroma wrapping around you like a warm blanket, sleepy and inviting. This isn't sterile lab work. It's raw, earthy science, tied to the rhythms of nature. Deeper into the night, the fermentation's pace slows, the bubbles less frantic. Brewers monitored by ear and nose, adjusting with herbs or transfers to fresh pots. A bad batch? Offered to the gods or repurposed, nothing wasted in this world. You think back to the temple rituals, where this funky brew became sacred libations, its wild origins adding to the mystique. The hut's dim light casts shadows on the pots, making the process feel enchanted. A bridge between earth and ether. Joke number 3. If yeasts had resumes, they'd list expert in turning mundane into merry under skills. As the first hints of dawn approach, you step back, the fermentation's magic lingering in the air. You've witnessed the wild heart of brewing, where science meets serendipity in clay confines. The city stirs faintly, ready for the fruits of this labor to flow into taverns and lives. You've felt the city awaken with the dawn's gentle nudge. The fermentation huts now quiet, as their bubbly contents mature under watchful eyes. The streets of Uruk buzz with early risers. Merchants setting up stalls, farmers hauling grain. But you're pulled toward a reed-thatched building where laughter spills out like overflowing pots. This is the Ale House, the Sumerian tavern where the fruits of fields, routines, and funky magic finally meet thirsty patrons. It's noisy, sure, but in that cozy, end-of-day way that makes you want to pull up a stool and forget your troubles. And if you think your local pub's rowdy, Imagine one where the beer comes with a side of sediment. You'd probably stick to the mocktails, but let's step inside anyway. You push through the low doorway, the air thick with the scent of spilled brew, roasted meats, and unwashed wool. Benches line the walls, crowded with folks from all walks, scribes nursing hangovers, traders swapping stories, even a priest or two off duty from temple duties. Clay cups clatter, and a barmaid weaves through the throng, pouring from massive pots balanced on her hip. Here's your mainstream fact. Sumerian alehouses around 3000 BCE were social hubs where beer was consumed communally, often through shared straws in large vessels, fostering bonds in a society built on cooperation. You spot a group huddled around a wide pot, dipping long reeds to sip without stirring up the gritty bottom. It's intimate, almost like a group therapy session with alcohol as the counselor. As you find a spot in the corner, the noise envelops you. Boasts about harvests, complaints about taxes, and the occasional bard strumming a lyre in the background. The beer flows freely, cloudy and warm, served in portions measured by the barmaid's practiced eye. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some taverns had beer tokens, clay bully or seals given as receipts for drinks like ancient bar tabs that could be redeemed later. Think of it as the world's first happy hour punch card, but made of mud. You imagine a patron fumbling for his token, muttering, "I swear I had one more sip coming." Joke number 1. It's proof that even in antiquity, nobody liked settling the bill at last call. But tavern life isn't all clear in the records. Historians still argue whether these alehouses were egalitarian spots or stratified by class, with some tablets suggesting separate areas for elites, while others depict mixed crowds. Were they melting pots of society, or did scribes sip superior brews away from the rabble? You scan the room, noting a mix of fine linens and rough tunics, the debate playing out in real time. Maybe it's both beer as the great equalizer, until the tab comes due. The atmosphere's lively yet laid back, conversations flowing as easily as the drink. The barmaid sets a cup before you, the brew's foam tickling your nose with its sour, bready aroma. You take a cautious sip through a straw, feeling the fizz from that fermentation magic you witnessed. It's not smooth, but it's honest, warming you from the inside like a hug from an old friend. Around you, patrons play games, dice carved from bone, wagering sips, or small trinkets. A trader recounts his journey along the river, embellishing with tales of distant lands, while his companions nod along, eyes glazing from the beer. Joke number 2. These stories probably grew taller with each round, turning a simple trip into an epic worthy of the god Sumerian for fish that got away, but with caravans. Evening deepens, the tavern's oil lamps casting a golden glow that softens the edges. Women chat in one corner, men boast in another, but boundaries blur as the night wears on. Beer ties it all back to the gods you poured libations for, with toasts invoking Ninkasi for bountiful batches. Remember that recipe you deciphered? It's alive here, in every gulp that eases the day's labors. The noise peaks with a group song, off-key but enthusiastic, then ebbs into murmurs as patrons trickle out. You linger, absorbing the warmth, the sense of community forged over shared pots. A final round circulates, the barmaid's smile weary but genuine. Tavern life unveils the human side of Sumer. Not just empires and ziggurats, but laughter, camaraderie, and the occasional spill. Joke number 3. It's where barley's journey ends, from field to fizz to fuzzy memories. The original farm to table, with a detour through divine approval. As the last lamps dim, you step out, the night's hush contrasting the alehouse's echo, carrying you towards stories of the women who made it all possible. You've stumbled out of the alehouse as the night wears on, the echoes of laughter and clinking cups fading into the cool Mesopotamian breeze. The streets are dimly lit by moonlight, guiding you toward a quieter quarter where women's voices murmur from open doorways. These aren't just any homes, they're workshops run by female brewers, the unsung queens of Sumerian suds. You pause outside one, catching the familiar scent of mashing barley wafting out, mingled with herbs and quiet determination. In a world where men built ziggurats and waged wars, women dominated brewing, turning it into an art form passed down like family secrets. And if you think your aunt's famous chili recipe is guarded, imagine one that could make or break a city's spirits. You'd probably bow down and beg for a taste. You slip inside, the room warmed by a low fire, where a group of women huddle around pots, stirring and tasting with practiced ease. The eldest, with silver-streaked hair and hands toughened by years of labor, nods you closer. Her name might be Siduri, evoking the alewife from ancient tales. Here's your mainstream fact. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 2700 BCE, women predominantly controlled the brewing industry, often as priestesses or entrepreneurs, producing beer for temples, taverns, and trade. It wasn't a side gig. It was a powerhouse role, with women like her overseeing production from grain to gulp. You watch her adjust the fire under a clay pot, the flames dancing shadows on the walls, highlighting the legacy etched in every vessel. As you settle on a stool, the women share stories between sips, their laughter soft like the fizz in their brews. Here's a quirky tidbit. Female brewers sometimes wore special amulets shaped like beer pots to invoke protection from spoilage spirits, believing it kept their batches pure and potent, like wearing a lucky charm bracelet, but for beer instead of bingo. You imagine one dangling from her neck, clinking as she stirs, warding off any mischievous microbes. Joke number 1. It's the original brewer's bling, guaranteeing your ale doesn't turn into ale fail. But this dominance isn't without questions. Historians still argue whether women's control over brewing stemmed from religious ties to goddesses like Ninkasi or from practical divisions of labor in Sumerian society. Was it divine decree or just smart economics, with women excelling in a craft that blended nurturing and nuance? You listen to the women debate lightly among themselves, one insisting it's the goddess's gift, another crediting their keen senses for spotting a bad batch early. The room feels alive with their wisdom, pots bubbling as if agreeing. It's a debate as old as the brew itself, adding depth to every pour. The legacy unfolds around you. Younger women apprentice under the elders, learning to malt barley with just the right soak, to ferment without fuss. They handle the pots with reverence, those clay vessels you've come to know so well, sealing them with lids inscribed with personal marks, signatures of sorts. Beer from female hands wasn't just drink. It was medicine, ritual, and revenue, sold at markets or offered at temples you've visited. You think back to Inanna's grind, realizing she's part of this sisterhood, her routine a thread in a vast tapestry woven by women. Joke number 2. These ladies were the original craft brewers, long before hipsters rediscovered it, except their labels said, "Made with love and a dash of divinity." The fire crackles softly, casting a golden hue over the group as they sample a fresh batch, passing a communal pot with reed straws. The brew is smoother here, perhaps infused with their expertise, warming you gently without the tavern's chaos. Women's roles extended beyond the hut. Some ran alehouses like the one you left, managing tabs and tails with equal skill. Their legacy touches everything, from the recipes you deciphered to the divine grog poured for gods. It's empowering, in a sleepy way, knowing beer's story is herstory, dominated by figures who balanced family, faith, and fermentation. Midnight approaches, the women's voices dropping to whispers as they clean up, stacking pots for tomorrow's dawn. You feel the weight of their contributions, how they elevated brewing from chore to craft, binding society with every batch. Joke number 3. If men built the empires, women brewed the glue that held them together, one sip at a time. As you prepare to leave, the elder presses a small jar into your hands, a token of their enduring legacy. The night air greets you again, carrying you toward the markets where this beer becomes more than a drink. You've carried that small jar from the women's workshop through the dimming streets, its weight a reminder of their skillful legacy as the city settles into a hushed rhythm. Dawn is breaking again, painting the sky in soft pinks, and the markets are stirring back to life, stalls unfolding like sleepy flowers, merchants calling out their wares. You're drawn into the thick of it, where beer isn't just a sip or a sacred offering. It's hard currency, traded like silver or grain in the bustling chaos. If you thought bartering at a garage sale was intense, try swapping your last jug for a new tunic. You'd probably end up naked and thirsty. But these Sumerians made it an art form. You weave through the crowd, the air alive with the clamor of haggling voices, the bleat of goats, and the clatter of carts. Vendors hawk everything from wool to weapons, but beer pots catch your eye, stacked high and gleaming with fresh seals. Here's your mainstream fact. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 2500 BCE, beer served as a form of currency, used to pay wages, settle debts, and trade for goods, reflecting its value in a barley-based economy. Workers earned rations in beer measures, and you spot a laborer exchanging his daily allotment for bread and dates. It's practical. Beer doesn't spoil quickly. It's portable in pots, and everyone wants it. You approach a stall, fingering your jar, ready to test the waters of this liquid economy. As you haggle with a merchant over a bolt of linen, offering your beer in trade, the quirky tidbit emerges. Sumerians used standardized beer tokens, or ration seals, small clay impressions that represented specific quantities, like IOUS for future pours. Think of it as the world's first beer voucher system, redeemable at any participating tavern. You imagine losing one in the market dust and cursing your luck. There goes my happy hour. Joke number 1. It's proof that even back then, people invented ways to delay paying the tab, ancient procrastination at its finest. But the role of beer as currency isn't without scholarly squabbles. Historians still argue whether it was a primary medium of exchange or more of a supplementary barter item, with some evidence showing it alongside silver shekels, while others suggest it dominated in rural areas. Was beer the everyday dollar, or just the change in your pocket? You ponder this as the merchant inspects your jar, sniffing the contents approvingly. Tablets from temples you've visited record payments in beer, blurring lines between divine dues and daily deals. It adds a layer of intrigue to every transaction, like debating if gift cards count as real money. The market pulses around you, sensory overload in the best way. The earthy smell of clay mixing with spices, the rough texture of fabrics brushing your arm, the taste of a sample sip sealing a deal. You trade your jar for the linen, feeling the thrill of the exchange beer flowing from women's hands to market stalls, binding the economy like glue. Remember the tavern life? This is where it starts. Pots changing hands faster than gossip. A farmer barters beer for tools. A scribe swaps for papyrus. It's a web of wants, met through wart. Joke number 2. Beer as money means your wallet's always half empty. Or is it half full? Optimism in every gulp. Deeper into the bazaar, you witness larger trades. A caravan trader unloading spices for vats of beer, his camels eyeing the pots warily. Beer's value shines here, nutritious, intoxicating, and storable. It's better than perishable fruits or bulky grain. You linger at a potter's stall, where fresh vessels are shaped for this very purpose, tying back to the clay secrets you uncovered. The merchant boasts of his pot's durability, holds beer like a miser holds gold. The crowd laughs, and you join in, the camaraderie infectious. This isn't cold commerce, it's social, with beer lubricating negotiations like it does conversations. Afternoon sun beats down, casting long shadows as deals wrap up. You've traded, tasted, and tangled in the market's web, seeing beer's versatility firsthand, from fields to fermentation to fiscal tool. It's exhausting, yet exhilarating, a reminder of how a simple brew powered an empire's pulse. Joke number 3. If beer was currency, Inflation must have been a real buzzkill, prices rising with every bubbly batch. As stalls pack up, the day's trade's done, you carry your new linen onward, the market's energy fading into evening's calm, where hymns to the beer goddess await. You've tucked that traded linen under your arm, leaving the market's clamor as twilight drapes Uruk in a soft purple haze. The street's quiet, but a melodic hum draws you toward a small courtyard where a group gathers under flickering oil lamps. They're not just chatting, they're chanting, their voices rising and falling like gentle waves, praising Ninkasi, the goddess of beer herself. The air smells faintly of barley and incense, and clay cups sit ready for offerings. You're about to join a poetic tribute, a hymn that weaves brewing into divine lore, making every sip feel like a nod to the heavens. If you thought karaoke night was soulful, try singing to a deity who literally blesses your brews. You'd probably flub the lyrics and offer her a soda by mistake. You settle among the group, the ground cool beneath you, a clay tablet passed around with cuneiform lines etched deep. This is the hymn to Ninkasi, a lyrical recipe you glimpsed in the scribe's workshop, but now it's alive, sung with reverence. Here's your mainstream fact. The hymn to Ninkasi, from around 1800 BCE, is one of the earliest known texts, combining brewing instructions with divine praise, celebrating beer as a gift from the goddess to humanity. You listen as the chant describes malting barley, baking bapir, and fermenting mash, each step a sacred act. The words roll over you, soothing like a lullaby, tying the women's brewing legacy to divine will. As the singers sway, their voices blending with the night's breeze, a quirky tidbit stands out. The hymn personifies beer as Ninkasi's child, born from her brewing vats, with some lines suggesting devotees drank to nurse her divine essence. Imagine calling your happy hour a spiritual bonding session with a goddess. You picture a singer raising a cup, whispering, "Cheers to Mama Ninkasi." Joke number 1. It's the ultimate mom and pop shop, except the pop's a pot and mom's a deity. But the hymn's purpose sparks debate. Historians still argue whether it was a practical brewing guide for temple workers or purely a ritual text to honor Ninkasi's power. Was it a divine IKEA manual for beer or a poetic love letter to fermentation? You watch a singer pause to sip from a shared pot, her eyes closed in reverence, and wonder if it's both. Instructions wrapped in worship. The debate adds depth, like the layers of flavor in the brew you followed from fields to taverns. It's a reminder that Sumerians saw no line between sacred and practical. Beer blurred them beautifully. The chant continues, describing pots you've seen, filled with bubbling wort, like the onrush of the Tigris and Euphrates. You feel the rhythm, the words painting vivid images, barley sprouting under Ninkasi's gaze, clay vessels cradling her liquid gift. The singers pass around a communal cup, each sip a toast to her generosity. You take a cautious sip through a reed straw, the sour warmth familiar from the alehouse, connecting you to the market trades and temple rituals. It's not just a drink, it's a story, sung in verses that have survived millennia. Joke number 2. This hymn's the original earworm, catchy enough to make you hum about barley for centuries. The courtyard fills with soft clapping as the chant loops, each verse slower, more meditative. Women lead the song, their voices echoing their brewing dominance, a callback to the workshop where Siduri stirred her pots. Ninkasi's hymn isn't just poetry, it's a cultural anchor, tying daily grinds to divine grace. You imagine scribes etching these words, ensuring every brewer knew the goddess's recipe. The lamps flicker, casting golden patterns, and you feel the hymn's spell, its cadence lulling you closer to sleep. The group sways, some leaning on each other, their devotion as palpable as the clay beneath your fingers. As midnight nears, the chanting softens, the final verses praising Ninkasi's gift of joy and community. You think back to the fermentation huts, where her magic bubbled, and the markets where her brew became currency. The hymn weaves it all, fields, pots, women, gods, into a single, soothing thread. Joke number 3. If Ninkasi ran a brewery today, her slogan would be, "Divinely brewed, humanly approved." The singers disperse, leaving cups as offerings. And you linger, the hymn's melody echoing as you step toward tales of beer's murky myths. You've drifted from the courtyard, the hymn to Ninkasi still humming in your ears like a gentle lullaby, as Uruk's streets settle into the deepest part of night. The air is cooler now, carrying the faint dampness of the nearby Euphrates. And you're drawn to a riverside spot where locals gather, swapping tales under the stars. They're not praising gods tonight. They're debunking myths about the beer you followed from fields to taverns, especially the murky ones, literally. Stories swirl about the drink's cloudiness, its sediment-heavy sips, and you're here to sift fact from fiction, straw in hand. If you thought urban legends about tap water were wild, imagine the rumors about ancient beer. You'd probably swear off drinking forever, but let's dive into the muddy waters anyway. You sit on a reed mat by the riverbank, the water lapping softly as a storyteller spins tales to a small crowd. The myth in question? That Mesopotamian beer was basically swamp juice, undrinkable without a straw to dodge the grit. Here's your mainstream fact. Sumerian beer around 2500 BCE was indeed cloudy, unfiltered, and thick with barley husks and fermentation byproducts, requiring reed straws to sip past the sediment. A practice well documented in art and texts. You pick up a straw from a nearby cup, twirling it between your fingers, and imagine navigating a chunky brew. The storyteller gestures dramatically, claiming the murk was a sign of purity, proof the gods blessed the batch. You nod, picturing that fermentation fizz you witnessed, but pure? That's a stretch. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Sumerians believed the sediment itself held magical properties, like a gritty elixir for strength or fertility, and would smear it on their skin like a proto-beer facial. Think spa day, but with a side of barley sludge. You laugh softly, imagining a Sumerian influencer touting mud mask Mondays to a crowd of skeptical farmers. Joke number 1. It's the original all-natural skincare, guaranteed to make you glow or just smell like a brewery. But the murkiness sparks debate. Historians still argue whether the cloudiness was intentional, a cultural preference for robust, textured beer, or simply a limitation of ancient filtration techniques. Did Sumerians love their brew chewy, or were they just stuck with primitive tech? You listen as the storyteller insists it was a choice, comparing clear beer to weak character. Strong brews needed grit, like life itself. Tablets hint at straining methods like those reed mats you saw in Inanna's hut, but never full clarity. It's like debating if chunky soup is gourmet or just lazy cooking. Either way, you're sipping carefully. The crowd leans in, passing a communal pot, each person dipping a straw to avoid the dregs. You try it, the brew's sour tang familiar from the alehouse, but the texture? It's like drinking a liquid loaf, bits catching in the straw. The myth-busting continues. Some say the murk hid impurities, even poisons, fueling tales of cursed batches. Others counter that brewers like Siduri, with their amulet-protected pots, kept things safe. The sediment just a byproduct of wild yeasts. You think back to the fermentation huts where bubbles danced freely and realize clarity wasn't the goal. Flavor and effect were. Joke number 2. Cloudy beer was the original personality test. Sip through the muck, or you're not Sumerian enough. The river reflects starlight, its gentle ripples mirroring the crowd's murmurs as they debate more myths. Was beer watered down for kids, or was that a tavern scam? Did priests bless every pot, or just the temple's share? You feel the weight of these stories, tying back to the markets where beer was currency, the hymns that sang its divine origins. The straw in your hand feels like a key, unlocking not just the drink but a culture that embraced its quirks. The storyteller wraps up, claiming the murk made Sumerians tougher, ready for life's messiness. You're not sure about that. but the shared cup and soft laughter create a warmth that's hard to resist. As the night grows late, the crowd thins, leaving empty cups and scattered straws. You've debunked the swamp juice myth, seeing the sediment as part of the charm, not a flaw. The river's flow soothes you, a reminder of the water that fed fields, filled pots, and fueled this whole beer saga. Joke number 3. If murky beer builds character, these Sumerians must have been legends. Just don't ask their dentists. With myths cleared, you're ready for the festival where this brew takes center stage, its cloudiness forgotten in the froth of celebration. You've wandered from the riverside, the storyteller's muddy myths still swirling in your mind as Uruk's streets pulse with a new energy. The air hums with anticipation, drums thumping in the distance, and you follow the crowd toward an open plaza where torches blaze like a second sunrise. It's festival time, a raucous celebration of the harvest, the gods, and of course, beer. The scent of roasted barley and spilled brews hangs heavy, and laughter erupts like bubbles in those pots you've come to know so well. If you thought your neighborhood block party was wild, this Sumerian beer fest is next-level chaos. You'd probably trip over a jug and end up dancing with a goat. But let's join the fray anyway. You elbow your way into the plaza, where people of every stripe, farmers, scribes, even a few priests loosening their robes, sway to the rhythm of lyres and drums. Massive clay vats, like the ones you saw fermenting, sit at the center, tended by brewers pouring generous portions into cups. Here's your mainstream fact. Mesopotamian festivals around 2500 BCE often revolved around beer, with communal feasts honoring gods like Enlil or Inanna, where entire cities drank together to mark harvests or religious rites. You grab a clay cup, the brew's frothy head catching torchlight, and feel the crowd's energy surge. It's not just a party, it's a sacred bash, tying fields, pots, and hymns into one boozy spectacle. As you sip through a reed straw, dodging that sediment you debunked, the quirky tidbit hits. Some festivals featured beer races, where teams competed to carry full jars across the plaza without spilling, winners claiming bragging rights and extra rations. Picture a Sumerian relay, jugs sloshing as runners dodge cheering drunks. You laugh, imagining yourself tripping spectacularly and wearing half the brew. Joke number 1. It's the original beer pong, but with higher stakes and worse aim. But the festival's vibe isn't all clear. Historians still argue whether these events were purely religious or also a chance for social release, with some tablets suggesting strict temple oversight, while others hint at wild, unscripted revelry. Were priests keeping tabs on every pour, or was it a free-for-all once the gods got their share? You watch a group toast Ninkasi, their voices echoing that hymn you chanted, but the spilled beer and raucous laughter suggest the rules loosen after sunset. It's like debating if your office holiday party is for team bonding or just an excuse to photocopy your face. Probably a bit of both. The plaza thrums with life. Dancers swirl in colorful linens, their movements mimicking the river's flow, while vendors hawk skewers of grilled fish and flatbreads. You weave through, clutching your cup, the brew warming you despite its sour kick. Women brewers, like those you met, are heroes here, their pots fueling the frenzy. You spot one refilling a vat, her smile weary but proud, a callback to Siduri's steady hands. Beer flows like currency, literally, as some barter extra sips for trinkets, echoing the market trades you joined. Joke number 2. This festival's the ultimate open bar, except the tabs paid in prayers and pottery. The music crescendos, and a group starts an impromptu song, slurring praises to the harvest that filled those fields you wandered. Cups are raised high, splashing the ground as offerings to the gods you poured libations for at the ziggurat. The beer's murk, once a myth to debunk, is forgotten in the shared joy, straws bobbing in unison. You join a circle, swaying to the beat, feeling the community knit tighter with every gulp. It's chaotic, yet comforting, a moment where daily grinds, Inanna's labor, the recipe's steps, culminate in celebration. The torchlight blurs, the crowd a warm blur of faces, and you're swept up in the froth of it all. As midnight looms, the festival softens, some revelers stumbling home while others slump against vats, cups empty. You linger, the drums fading to a gentle pulse, the plaza littered with straws and good intentions. Joke number 3. If this is how Sumerians partied, no wonder their empires lasted. Beer and vibes could conquer anything. The night's joy lingers, a testament to beer's power to unite, setting the stage for its deeper role as the city's social glue. You've slipped away from the festival's fading drums, the plaza's torchlight now just a flicker in the distance as Uruk settles into a sleepy hush. The cool night air brushes your skin, carrying the faint tang of spilled beer from the revelry. You wander toward a quieter neighborhood where mud brick homes glow softly under oil lamps, and families gather in courtyards, sharing cups and stories. This isn't the loud chaos of the tavern or the sacred pomp of the ziggurat. It's the everyday heartbeat of Sumerian life, where beer binds people in ways deeper than trade or worship. If you thought your family dinners were bonding, try passing a communal pot with straws. You'd probably hog the whole thing and start a feud. But here, it's pure connection. You settle on a low bench in one courtyard, the ground scattered with date pits and straws from earlier sips. Neighbors sit close, their voices soft, laughing over small daily dramas. A lost goat, a stubborn crop. Beer is the glue here, loosening tongues and knitting bonds. Here's your mainstream fact. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 2500 BCE, beer was a social cornerstone, consumed daily in homes, workplaces, and gatherings, fostering community in a society where cooperation was survival. You watch a grandmother pour from a clay pot, the same kind you saw fermenting, passing it to her kin. Each sip through a reed straw feels like a shared ritual, tying them to the fields, brewers, and gods you followed. As you lean back, the quirky tidbit emerges. Sumerians often drank beer as a family, even giving diluted versions to kids, believing it was safer than river water and nutritious like liquid bread. Think of it as the original energy drink, but with a side of barley grit. You picture a toddler wielding a tiny straw, sipping proudly while the adults chuckle. Joke number 1. It's the only family meal where everyone's hydrated and slightly buzzed by dessert. But the social role of beer isn't without debate. Historians still argue whether it primarily unified communities or sometimes fueled conflicts, with some tablets hinting at tavern brawls or disputes over beer debts. Was it always a peacemaker, or did it spark the occasional fistfight over the last sip? You observe the courtyard's calm, the way a shared pot soothes tensions, a neighbor forgives another's late payment after a round. It's hard to imagine strife here, but you recall the market's heated bartering, where beer's value could turn friendly haggling into heated spats. The debate lingers, like sediment in a cup. The pot makes its way to you, the brew's familiar sour warmth grounding you in the moment. You sip, feeling the fizz from those fermentation huts, a callback to the women's skillful hands and Nkazi's hymns. Beer here isn't just refreshment. It's a social contract, sealing friendships, easing apologies, even marking betrothals. A young couple in the corner toasts their engagement, their cups clinking softly. It's intimate, the kind of scene that makes cities feel like villages. You think of the festival's wild energy, but this is quieter, more enduring. The daily glue that holds Sumer together through harvests, floods, and everything in between. The night deepens, stars twinkling like scattered barley grains. Someone tells a story about a trader who paid his debts in beer, echoing your market trades, and the group laughs, passing the pot again. Joke number 2. Beer as social glue must have made awkward silences extinct. Spill a secret, sip a brew, and all's forgiven. The courtyard's warmth wraps around you, the communal sipping a ritual as sacred as temple offerings. Even the kids, sipping their diluted share, mimic their elders, learning the rhythms of togetherness. It's a microcosm of everything you've seen. Fields feeding pots, women brewing, gods approving, all culminating in these shared moments. As lamps burn low, the group's chatter slows, voices softening like the brew's fading fizz. You feel the community's pulse, strengthened by every shared sip, every story swapped. Beer's role here is subtle but profound, a thread weaving through daily life, from dawn routines to midnight toasts. Joke number 3. If beer binds Sumerians this tightly, no wonder their cities stood for centuries. Just don't ask about the morning hangovers. The courtyard empties slowly, leaving you with the echo of connection, ready to reflect on beer's lasting mark on this ancient world. You've wandered from the courtyard's warmth, the soft clink of cups and murmured stories fading as you step into Uruk's quiet streets, bathed in moonlight. The city feels like it's dreaming, its mud brick walls holding centuries of secrets. You're drawn to the riverbank, where the Euphrates glimmers, reflecting the stars like a liquid mirror. Here, surrounded by the gentle lap of water and the distant hum of night, you reflect on beer's enduring legacy, etched in clay and woven into every layer of Sumerian life. If you thought your favorite craft brew had a backstory, this one's a saga. You'd probably need a whole keg to process it. But let's sit by the water and let it sink in. You settle on a smooth stone, the coolness grounding you as you trace beer's journey from field to festival. Those clay pots, buzzing with fermentation, weren't just vessels. They were time capsules, preserving a craft that shaped a civilization. Here's your mainstream fact. Beer's influence in Mesopotamia around 2500 BCE extended beyond sustenance, underpinning economy, religion, and social bonds, with its production and trade recorded on thousands of clay tablets. You think of the cuneiform you deciphered, the hymns sung to Ninkasi, each wedge a testament to beer's role in building cities like Uruk. The river's flow reminds you of the irrigation that fed barley fields, a cycle as eternal as the stars above. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some Sumerians buried small clay beer jugs with their dead, believing the brew would sustain them in the afterlife, like packing a cosmic lunchbox for eternity. You imagine a soul sipping through a straw in the underworld, toasting to a life well lived. Joke number 1. It's the ultimate BYOB. Bring your own brew, even to the grave. But beer's legacy isn't without questions. Historians still argue whether its prominence drove agricultural innovation or merely rode the wave of surplus grain. Did beer inspire the push for better barley yields? Or was it a happy byproduct of farming success? You gaze at the river, its waters feeding the fields you wandered, and wonder if necessity or indulgence came first. It's like debating if pizza made ovens famous or vice versa. Either way, everyone's eating. The debate adds a layer of mystery, tying back to the women brewers, market trades, and festival cheers you've witnessed. The night feels softer now, the air a gentle caress as you reflect on beer's mark. Those pots, crafted by hands like Siduri's, carried more than liquid. They held community, from tavern laughter to courtyard toasts. The economy you bartered in ran on beer's value, while temples poured it to gods, a cycle from earth to ether. You picture the alehouse's buzz, the festival's froth, each moment a thread in a tapestry woven by barley and ambition. Joke number 2. Beer didn't just build Sumer. It was the social architect, designing parties and prayers in one go. As you sit, the river's rhythm slows your thoughts, the stars blurring into a dreamy haze. Beer's legacy in clay endures, not just in tablets, but in the very walls of this city, built by workers paid in brews. It's a quiet power, connecting daily grinds to divine dreams, markets to myths. You feel it now, the weight of a drink that shaped history, its story as soothing as the water's whisper. Joke number 3. If beer's this eternal, no wonder Sumerians wrote it into their forever. Cheers to that. The night wraps around you like a soft blanket, the river's gentle ripples carrying away the day's bustle. You're here, by the Euphrates, where barley grew, pots bubbled, and communities thrived. The stars seem closer now, their light a reminder of the timeless dance of grain and gods. Let your eyes drift shut, imagining the clay pots resting quietly, their work done, their legacy sealed in every tablet, every sip shared. The city sleeps, and so can you, cradled by the hum of history, the river's lullaby guiding you into dreams. Feel the calm settle, your breath slowing, as Uruk's story fades into a whisper, leaving only peace.